How's it going, friends? Welcome to episode 3 of the Cynical Den Podcast. I hope you're all having a great day, and by that I mean I don't actually give a fuck either way. You know, I've been wanting to play The Last Guardian all week. I bought it last week and it's been sitting on my desk all week, and I'm looking forward to playing it, and I could be playing it, but instead I'm recording this show for you. Aren't I so generous? I mean, aren't you thrilled to have such a cathartic web host doing this awesome show for you and sacrificing his own personal game time to provide you with a little bit of entertainment? Because I certainly could use a fucking smile today. Actually, that's a joke. I'm in an alright mood at the moment, which is fleeting for me. So why don't we ride that high? Or better yet, tank it by talking about topics, because you know me, I'm great at ruining my own mood by talking about topics that I don't like. Well, hopefully this week we'll have some interesting, good topics to talk about that aren't gonna make me pissed off. I certainly hope not, especially with one of the segments that we're doing today. I basically get to talk about movie trailers that I liked, of which there were many over the last week. Why don't we start off the show by talking about video games? In particular, why the gaming industry is certainly going to crash if they keep up their stupid antics like they have over the last few months. Since October, we've seen, about 10 to 15 major releases? I mean, this has been a pretty jam-packed year compared to at least the last 4 years of games. But this particular holiday season has been jam-packed with games. And I think a lot of us, from the very start, were worried that some of these games weren't going to sell well. But I think even some of us were surprised by just the sheer magnitude of bad sales that we've seen for many of the titles that have released since October. I don't really understand why the companies that publish these games didn't realize that this wasn't exactly the smartest idea. Even if I wanted to release something in time for the holidays, I would much rather release unopposed in March or April or May, even June. I would rather release against nothing or 1 or 2 games than try and jam in for the holidays to get in on those Christmas sales, but risk going to competition with some of the biggest, most prominent IPs in gaming. It's so odd, because you never see this in any other industry where you've got multiple films that are competing for the same market releasing at the same time. I mean, they release in the general window, but even Batman vs Superman avoided Civil War because DC didn't want to compete with Marvel. Even with Batman and Superman, their 2 strongest IPs, they still didn't feel comfortable releasing in May next to Civil War to get in on the summer for you guys up north, for the summer sales, for the summer tickets rather, but then have to compete against another major film. So when you see that, and EA is releasing fucking Titanfall 2 in between Battlefield and Call of Duty, you've got to wonder, what the fuck were they thinking? I'd like to rattle off a list of games that I would consider to not have sold well, despite the fact that I actually like some of these games. In fact, a couple of these are probably some of my favorite games of the year. I mean, what are the clear qualified successes of this year? Pokemon, Sun and Moon, that is a definite success. Battlefield, though it actually didn't sell as well as Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, at least based on the information we have right now, but Call of Duty Infinite Warfare certainly wasn't considered a success by GameStop. It seriously hurt them. But what about the other ones? What about the ones where we can't even really debate it? Gears of War 4. Sales significantly down compared to Gears of War 2, which released at a comparable time in the Xbox 360's life cycle versus the Xbox One. Titanfall 2 releases on 3 platforms as opposed to 2, and has had diminished sales, which is a damn tragedy because Titanfall 2 was such a fantastic game. Dishonored 2, sales down compared to the original. Seems odd. Now, I'm sure some of that has to do with the fact that the PC port is awful, but even then, it seems strange that a sequel would sell worse than a new IP. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, sales down. Final Fantasy 15, sales significantly down in Japan. Now, of course, we can partially attribute that to the fact that the gaming industry is kind of dying in Japan. At least the console gaming market, that is. But when Final Fantasy, which usually sells millions of copies in Japan, is selling just over 500,000 copies in Japan, that's a bit troublesome. All of these games have seen declines compared to their predecessors. Now, whether or not you consider the sales on their own to be bad is a little bit of a different story. I mean, I certainly wouldn't consider a game not breaking 1 million in its first week to be a success. If a game is releasing on 3 or 4 platforms with a combined install base surpassing at least 60 or 70 million if you're talking about the consoles, but if you include PC, now you're in the hundreds of millions. A game with a massive budget and a huge marketing campaign not breaking 1 million in its first week, that's a bit concerning. Meanwhile, we can look at the beginning of the year, even towards the middle of the year. Uncharted 4, massive success, especially for a PlayStation exclusive. Doom sold like gangbusters. The Division, which released in March, to my knowledge completely unopposed, was the highest selling new IP of all time. It even surpassed Destiny. Hell, you want another example? I know that this is, some people will be like, well, the IP is so strong, but Grand Theft Auto 5 releases in September of 2013, sells millions of copies. Millions! In fact, if I recall correctly, in its first week, it sold well over 10 million copies. And yet, for some reason, there's this obsession within the industry to release within the Christmas window. I don't understand it. I mean, I'm hoping this year will serve as a lesson to these guys about the toll of releasing an IP that just never had a chance of competing in that kind of market. I don't know, maybe EA were trying to undercut the sales of Infinite Warfare, but it didn't really work because Infinite Warfare still sold better than Battlefield 1, despite the fact that Battlefield 1 was the highest liked trailer of all time. I mean, that's a topic for another day, the fact that trailers don't mean dick all in terms of your actual sales. Well, to an extent. I mean, I'm exaggerating a bit. Obviously, the hype behind Battlefield 1 certainly helped it out. Titanfall 2 didn't stand a chance getting released between the two most prominent shooters of this console generation. It had no chance. Absolutely no chance. And it blows my mind that these companies didn't realize, hey, we've got a game that admittedly has large appeal, but it doesn't have the same sort of appeal as some of these big franchises. Might it be a good idea to release it a little bit at quieter time of the year? That way it's got more eyeballs on it because they're not getting drawn away. I mean, to draw it back to film like we did at the beginning, you don't see these small indie films releasing at the same time as massive Hollywood blockbusters. I mean, sometimes it happens because there's so many movies that come out, but a lot of your, Oscar movies, which are the ones that often don't perform as well as your 200, well, actually, that's not true. These 200, $300 million films are not performing well because they cost too much money. But that's another topic for another day. But when you've got these smaller films, they tend to release in the times that people aren't really going to be seeing these huge Marvel movies or Star Wars or anything like that. They try and release unopposed to the best extent that they can, because it's just the smart thing to do. Either you have way too much faith in your IP, or you're just completely fucking retarded. I mean, those are the two explanations for why you would want to release a game that has some appeal, but not nearly the same appeal as Call of Duty. It's just illogical to release a game at such a time. It certainly doesn't harm gamers. All it means is we got more choices than we have money to spend on the games. More choice is better. But at the same time, it's not like it would have harmed us if these games were a bit more spaced out, because then it means we get a little bit more time to spend on these games. I mean, once I finish playing a game that has come out recently, I got to move on to the next one. I haven't played Battlefield 1 in a couple of weeks because I've moved on to like Titanfall 2, and then I wanted to play Dishonored 2, and I've got The Last Guardian. I've been playing Watch Dogs 2. Whereas you get a little bit more time to spend with these games when they release in, May or something like that. You got a bit more time to spend with it. But the real casualty of this kind of decision making is the developer. At least, especially if they're an independent developer like Respawn. I mean, that's certainly got to be a bit troubling for those guys, because they didn't have a say in it, even though they own the Titanfall IP and they're completely independent from EA. And to be put in that kind of window, it's just, I'm not happy about it. I'm really not happy about it, because I've been saying so much that Titanfall 2 was such a great shooter, and so many people just didn't pick it up. And I don't blame them. You gotta choose between Battlefield or Titanfall, and a lot of people choose Battlefield. That's totally understandable. I mean, Battlefield is a bigger game. It's got more appeal. And probably if push came to shove, I probably would have bought the same way as well. Or just some people are like, well, I got one, that's all I need. So even if they, they've got the funds to buy the game, well, I got one, that's all I need, and in a couple of weeks I'll buy Call of Duty. It gets squashed on all sides. And the same happened with Dishonored 2, the same happened with Gears of War 4, the same probably happened with another game that I'm forgetting about. I'm pretty sure Watch Dogs 2 certainly didn't sell as well as the first game. It's fascinating. And I don't know if it's indicative of just a sign that game sales are down, which they definitely are. I don't think anybody can deny that software sales for games themselves are down. On consoles, at least. I mean, on PC, a lot of games are thriving. But in terms of these major games, they're just not selling that well. And if you got a game that costs at least 50 million, like at least 50 million for some of these games, if not a lot more, not selling up to even 1 million copies on day one, I don't want to, it's not a healthy state for the industry if that's how games are selling. I mean, obviously, it will really tell when we move into next year and we start to see the same trend, or we see games picking up in sales again and people paying more attention. But I'm a little bit concerned about the gaming industry, honestly. And the last few months have really brought that to the forefront with just these illogical decisions that have hurt really good games getting the sales that they deserve. Except for Call of Duty, because they thought it was a brilliant idea to put microtransactions into Modern Warfare. Man, you're really making me regret not buying your fucking game. Let's move on to some movie trailers, of which we've gotten a lot over the past couple of weeks. I'll start off with my favorite trailer that I saw, which was for War for the Planet of the Apes. And this is partially because I really like the other two films. I mean, in terms of reboots, I'd say that the only reboot series that I consider to have been consistently good over the last few years has been the Planet of the Apes reboot. I think it's such an interesting story to tell in terms of leading up to how they got to the original film. And of course, it's carried by Andy Serkis, who, how has he not been nominated for an Oscar for his motion capture work? I mean, a human playing an ape, that's and doing it really convincingly. I mean, surely that's got to be the mark of a fantastic actor. But alas, giving an award to somebody who's in a mocap suit, that's not real acting, as some troglodytes would like to suggest. In terms of these films, I've just really liked the character development of the way that it's sort of built up to this, in a way that, I mean, you've got a difficult premise to work with. I mean, you're trying to convince people that humanity is actually like fighting a war against a foe of similar strength in apes. I mean, it takes a lot of good writing and good world building to set up that kind of scenario. And of course, I mean, at the end of this film, we pretty much know what's going to happen. I mean, the apes are going to win because it's got to lead up to the original film. But the task for this film would be trying to actually explain it in a way where the audience is not going to have their suspension of disbelief completely snapped. They'll be able to sit there and go, yeah, I can get behind that. I mean, I'm just looking forward to it, period. I mean, I thought the trailer was pretty good. I don't know if it had the one-note piano trope that so many trailers have, including one that we'll be talking about very shortly. But I thought it was a good trailer, and I'm looking forward to that film. I really like these Planet of the Apes reboot films. I just think they're good films. And I know that some people disagree, but I think by and large, a lot of people agree that they're just solid films. With a good beginning, middle, and end, likable characters, and an interesting plot in which no side is really good. As opposed to, I guess, a similar film, Avatar, where it's very obvious that the humans are the bad guys. I'm just really excited for this movie. I'm really looking forward to watching it. Speaking of other good trailers, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I mean, it looks good. It's another Marvel movie, but I do like the Guardians of the Galaxy, in terms of characters, I think they're a little bit more interesting than some of the other ones, but also just because the first movie was really good and sort of a breath of fresh air. It wasn't just good for a Marvel movie, it was a good film. And I think it worked well because it kind of stood a little bit more independent of the other stuff that was happening. It's interesting because when I'm watching Daredevil, which I consider to be the best MCU property, I think the TV show is excellent. And of course I'm biased because I love Daredevil. But I'm always like, oh, I wish there was a little bit more recognition of Daredevil in the films, even though they want to keep them separate for some reason. Despite the fact that Daredevil is evidently a far more capable person to be on the Avengers than multiple characters in the Avengers. I mean, you got a blind ninja who can hear the faintest of sounds, but apparently he's not as much of an asset as a normal person who's good at kicking people and a dude with a bow and arrow. But getting back to Guardians of the Galaxy, I mean, I can't remember it clearly because I didn't watch it again. I only watched it once. Which, I don't know if that tells you anything, but of course, I'm looking forward to it. Another Marvel movie trailer for Spider-Man Homecoming. I mean, I don't think it was a particularly thorough trailer, because I'm guessing it's meant to be sort of a teaser, even though it's 2 minutes long. But, you know, it still looks good. I love Michael Keaton, so I'm glad that he's in it as the Vulture. I actually do like, this Tom Holland guy as Spider-Man. A lot of people forget, but, you know, Spider-Man is a teenager in high school. So people, oh, he looks too young. No, I'm pretty sure he's the right age. So I don't really see how that's a problem. I mean, of course, I've got a couple of misgivings with the casting, but I'm gonna give the movie a chance as well with that. I mean, it's not a big deal in terms of some of the casting choices I don't really agree with, but it's Spider-Man. I like Spider-Man. I'm looking forward to it. Let's talk about the trailer that I didn't like. And man, shocker, I didn't like the trailer for Transformers The Last Night. Who would have guessed that? It doesn't look good. And it's funny, I was reading the comments, people are, oh yeah, I'm hyped for the 5th Transformers film. And I'm just sitting here thinking, I mean, really? I mean, aside from the fact that the trailer didn't even have a consistent letterbox effect, what I mean by that is that the aspect ratio in the trailer wasn't even consistent. You'd have some shots where it's like 21:9, then 16:9, then back to 21:9. I mean, how hard is it to just do a letterbox? I mean, who edited that and said, yeah, that's good, let's go with that? It's not totally distracting that the black bars change repeatedly. The film decided to go with the worst aspect of these Transformers films, which is the human characters. When this movie was first announced, I don't know where I got this information from, but I was under the impression that it was going to be set on Cybertron, or otherwise just not on Earth, and it was going to be all Transformers. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's actually interesting. I'd probably watch that. I'm actually interested in watching a Transformers film set on Cybertron with no humans. You just got Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, and whatnot against like Megaton. Oh, well, that's right. All of them are pretty much dead. Galvatron, or whatever the fuck the new one's name is, and Starscream. Oh wait, no, he's dead. So I guess that's... Man, it'd be nice if you just rebooted the whole thing. One time where I'd actually like you to reboot the whole thing. But instead, they're still gonna set it on Earth with these useless human characters that don't need to be in the film. I get really sick of these movies where you've got human characters who are utterly useless. And it's not because they're usually twat characters to begin with, but it's just the fact that a human being in this situation is useless. I mean, if military guys are useless in a situation involving Transformers, which they are, then what is some douchebag kid who just happened to stumble upon a car that turned into a robot? Why is he even coming into Chicago to fight Transformers? He's useless. They're giant transforming robots. And yet somehow he's supposed to be able to actually contribute to this battle. But even then, even if they were useful, the problem is that they're so insufferable. These characters usually suck. And I like the Transformers. I mean, I don't think they're characterized well in the films at all, but I still like them to a greater extent than the human characters. And the thing is, I could forgive the plot holes, the glaring plot holes that every Transformers movie have, in ways that pretty much snap the plot in two. Those are things that I would be able to look past if it was just great action and just the Transformers. And this is my big issue with these people who are like, oh, well, no, I like these movies. They're good. I like the action. But the majority of the movie isn't action. I mean, the majority of the movie is just insufferable dialogue with obnoxious twat characters that nobody likes at all. I mean, if anybody likes them, I mean, that is fascinating to me, because I don't consider any of the human characters in these movies to have any good traits, except for like one or two of the characters. They're not all action. They're not. Most of it is stupid, like just awful, poorly written jokes that don't land at all. There's a lot of little subtle racist jabs that Michael Bay likes to put into his movies. It's not action, and the action itself isn't very well shot. Okay, so great, you did a cool shot with a completely artificial character. How is that supposed to impress me? It's easy to just shoot an empty frame with nothing in it and then put a transformer in it and oh, it's great. The reason why people like Mad Max Fury Road is because the special effects were not overbearing. I mean, the vast majority of it was practical effects. It feels real, and it's technically impressive, because you can watch the scenes in that movie and understand the effort that would have gone into it to make it look good. I'm just not impressed by CGI robots that I can barely tell apart, because they all look the fucking same, fighting each other. And then it wants to do this fake out in the end. Oh, I'm no, oh, damn it. They look the same, alright? I'm Optimus Prime. I'm gonna stab Bumblebee in the head. I'm gonna trick you out. Like, I know you're not gonna stab him in the head. I mean, why do they try and trick us like this? What, you think you're gonna do something unpredictable in a Transformers movie? Next thing you know, you're gonna tell me that a tumor is good for my thinking organ. And like I mentioned before, these stupid, okay, yeah, let's join the trend of every trailer that's released over the last year with a single piano note going, boom, boom, boom. Oh, look at us, man. It's so serious. I'm sick of these trends getting beaten into the ground. One trailer does it well, then every trailer's like, okay, time to do the Inception, blah. So every trailer you see, blah, blah, blah. And now it's the piano, oh, look at us. Aren't we so clever? God, I'm getting too annoyed about that. But seriously, I have no doubt that movie will suck, because I hate every single Transformers movie. The first one was marginally tolerable, but everything after that sucks. I don't even know why I have Revenge of the Fallen on DVD. I think someone gave it to me as a gift. Man, I should probably break that on video. I wouldn't mind. Make a little bit of YouTube money, setting the thing aflame. Alright, now let's talk about something of a little bit more of an important matter. I think over the past week there's been a lot of controversy surrounding YouTube, especially in certain corners of the woods in terms of YouTube. But in terms of a more broad problem that I think I can understand the concern about it is what we think is going on with YouTube's new algorithm. And the fact that I said what we think is a bit indicative as to what the issue is. The fact that we don't even know for sure and are just speculating is in itself a little bit troubling. But according to Matt Pat, who a lot of you are probably familiar with from Game Theory, who does excellent sort of videos on the topics about YouTube. I mean, the guy knows his stuff when it comes to like making YouTube work for you. But in terms of a recent video, he's talking about how he thinks that the YouTube algorithm now, which is partially supported by the new UI update that you've probably seen, prioritizes minutes watched and daily uploads. As in, these are the things that will get you on the trending page, these are the things that will get you in recommended. And as a guy who doesn't upload daily, and probably never will, at least while I'm working on my own, is a little bit concerning. There's certain kind of content that works well for the daily upload, and what I do isn't one of them. Especially now that I'm planning to get some animation projects up and running on the Crude Penguin channel. The new algorithm is great for companies, channels that basically have a huge staff, or at least even a few people who are able to pump out stuff daily. It's good for vloggers, you know, reaction videos, which I don't even consider to be content. Reaction videos, god damn. You know, these prank shit, let's players and these bigger channels. It's great for them, because they can certainly upload daily. And in the case of, you know, vloggers in particular, which is pretty much the easiest content that you can do. Just turn on the camera. Oh, I'm in the shopping center. Oh, look at this. Oh, it's milk, full cream. You know, it's easy. And I don't care about this. Oh man, it takes a toll. Yeah, I'm sure it does take a toll recording your whole life. Probably why you shouldn't do it. But in terms of that kind of thing, you can record it and make a 15 to 20 minute, even an hour-long video if your people want to sit through that, your viewers at least. And you're good. There you go. You've got daily uploads, long length, good for you. But what about people who do reviews of video games? You can't do a video game review a day. It's impossible. You can't do an animation every day. It look awful, and even if it looks terrible, making an animation a day, that's not going to happen. A musician, at least one that's good, is certainly not going to be able to compose music every day. And even with the content that lends well to daily uploads, people are going to get burned out. I mean, it just doesn't work. For smaller YouTubers, animators, musicians, video essay people, things like that, we're fucked. We're totally fucked. If this is the way that the algorithm works, it's just not going to work for a lot of us. Which is really concerning because a lot of this content is what helped build YouTube. I mean, this is the kind of content that I like to watch. And this is someone who watches YouTube pretty much every day. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I like to see. So to see YouTube basically saying, all right, you know that content that's actually good, that takes a lot of effort and is creatively rewarding and that your fans like, fuck that. We're just gonna post shit from multimedia, like massive corporations that have tons of crew who can release some stuff every day. We're just gonna put that on the trending tab. It seems odd that YouTube wouldn't prioritize the people who effectively make this site. I mean, I don't think there'll ever be a time, I honestly don't think there'll ever be a time where there's a mass exodus from YouTube that will cause damage to YouTube itself. Unless you got some of these big guys like PewDiePie or Markiplier or whatever, if they started leaving, then YouTube might pay a little bit more attention. But in terms of these smaller communities, like you got people talking, oh, you know, us in the skeptic community, which I don't like that term to begin with, but you know, we gotta move to different platforms. That's not gonna make a dent in YouTube. I mean, they are way too big, which is the issue that I think a lot of people ignore. At the end of the day, YouTube's situation is very different to what happened with MySpace. Because a lot of people go, well, MySpace fell. Yeah, but the big difference between MySpace and YouTube is that YouTube is actually offering, I mean, it is the foremost, premier, #1 head honcho in terms of video distribution on the internet. Nothing comes close, not even Netflix. Dailymotion, vid.me, these things don't even come close to YouTube. They are top dog. And transferring all of your work, something that's full-time job for you, from YouTube to a different platform is very different from changing an account that's pretty much then changing a social media account. I mean, it's not the same equivalency. I just don't think YouTube could ever come down because I think they've just got too much of a monopoly on this. But at the same time, it certainly does hurt the quality of the content on YouTube because when you're trying to replicate TV, you're defeating the whole purpose of YouTube. The brilliance behind YouTube is that it's not like TV. TV is very segmented, it's very orderly, and I love TV. I mean, I love lots of TV shows, especially in the last decade or so. We've had some fantastic, you know, some of the best shows that have ever been made. I love TV, but I like YouTube for different reasons. I like to see these smaller, independent people making content that's different, the kind of stuff that you would never see on TV, not only because it doesn't fit the format, but because some people just wouldn't broadcast it because they think it's too offensive. This is the kind of stuff that I like. And so to see YouTube put a priority on stuff that I don't care about, that I don't even think is going to help them out, because it's going to hamper the soon-to-be new talent. This is one of the issues that YouTube keeps having, is that when you inhibit the ability for new channels to grow, you are inhibiting the growth of your future big channels. You need to help smaller channels that will eventually grow to become the big ones when the big guys quit or just fall out of prominence. You know, it's got to be a cycle. And to focus on TV just throws a wrench into this cycle. What I'm hoping is that YouTube will start being a bit more transparent, because I think that's all that they really need to do. One of my biggest issues with YouTube is the fact that they don't tell us anything, and there's no way to even communicate with them or contact them. We just need transparent communication between YouTube and the people who make content that you make money off of running ads. Yes, it's your website, but the creators make the website too. The creators need YouTube, but YouTube needs the creators too. It's a two-way street. You got to be transparent with the people who work on YouTube full-time, and even the people who do it as a hobby. You know, you got to be clear with everybody. Let people know what the fuck is going on. And it would save you so much trouble, because even if people didn't like what you were doing, at least they know what's going on. Because right now, aside from, it's just a theory, a game theory, I had to do that. Aside from that, it's just a fucking theory. We have no clue. It's a guess. All right, let's move on to the Q&A. I was thinking about doing 2 questions. Maybe I'll save one of the questions that I got just before I started recording for next week. Remember to leave your question in the comment section. You can even throw it to me on Twitter. I'll probably answer it. I'll probably consider it as well, but I'd prefer it if you did it in the comments of this video. But the question that I got was from Hairy Mouse Turd. I love the name, by the way. And his question is, you talked briefly about your thoughts on Titanfall 2, but what's your opinion on Battlefield 1? I'm actually glad you asked this, because I don't think I've even talked about Battlefield 1 very thoroughly, aside from probably on some streams or on Twitter. But it's good. I mean, it's a great game. I like most Battlefield games. I like the large-scale combat. I like the combination of infantry, artillery, vehicles. I think it's a very potent game, and I think the fact that there's so much to it means that there's a greater deal of diversity in terms of the way that you can play the game. As much as I like Titanfall 2, it does suffer from similar issues to the first game, in that there are certain just clearly more viable options than other ones, just because of its core design. But with Battlefield, because it's such large scale with so many different kind of fully fleshed out options, there's just different ways that you can play it. And that's the same in Battlefield 1 in terms of you can play a game just running around in a tank. You can go sniper, you can play your LMG sort of class and bunker down in key strategic points, like specifically on Empire's Edge, which is probably one of my favorite maps in the game. Of course, you can go assault, run around the map, just constantly run around the map, capping objectives, which is my favorite way of playing. And you can also, you know, play in the plane. There's just all these different ways to play Battlefield. And it's still like that in Battlefield 1, despite some people I've talked to concerns that they feel it's too much like Battlefront. Nah, it isn't. It's got a lot more depth than Battlefront had, that's for damn sure. And by Battlefront, I'm talking about the reboot, not the originals. The originals are way better than fucking 2015 Battlefront. But that's neither here nor there. I would have difficulty not recommending Battlefield 1. It's a good game. It's a great game. It's got problems, as all Battlefield games do in terms of balancing. But I really have been enjoying it. The aesthetic lifts everything. It's interesting. We have to go back in time to get a breath of fresh air in terms of our modern shooters. But it's really good. It is a really good game, despite the fact that I haven't really talked about it that much. But I would definitely recommend it. If I'm looking for a shooter, you can't go wrong with Battlefield 1. It is a really great game. That does it for today's episode. Thank you for watching the podcast. As usual, if you like what you saw here, feel free to check out the other content that Crude Penguin creates on the website. You can read the comics, and I've got some really good comics coming up soon, especially the one that I will be posting for Christmas. I think that one's going to be hilarious. As well as on Twitter and Facebook. That does it for me. Thank you for watching the Cynical Den Podcast, and I'll catch you next time.